to put it into the chat window. The chat window is there for you and for me to answer questions for everybody. And so today we're covering chapter 4 of the MREA contract to close, MREA admin contract to close. And so as we're looking at this, seems like it's bouncing a little bit there. Can everybody hear me okay? If you can put that in the chat window, make sure that everybody can hear me fine. Yes, okay, perfect, awesome. So we're on chapter 4, the MREA contract to close, and this one's called, this chapter is called tracking. And so before we open up into this chapter, what I'd like to do is actually kind of close down last week's chapter and see, was there any questions that as you were going through this week, did you come up with any questions that you had, anything that showed up as you were implementing or starting to do anything this week? What kind of stood out to you? And just type them in the chat window there. All right, so now this is a participatory class, so how you participate in here is how you participate everywhere. Or you kind of, and here's the thing, always know that in any of my classes, we have this situation and it's called, you know, we stay out of curiosity, or stay in curiosity and stay out of judgment. And so, you know, there's no judgment right or wrong, it just is, and our goal is to help each other through. So if as you were implementing last week, or as you were going back through and reviewing, or anything that happened over the last week, as you were going through that first part of contract to close, what stood out to you? What can we help you with? Just love the additions I was able to make. Made our introductions and check-ins so much more clear. I love that, love that. It's great stuff there. We're gonna cover a really cool piece today. I really enjoyed this. You know, because it's some body language. You know, as we talk about in bold, we talk about, you know, emotions, and we talk about, you know, motion equals emotion. And so I'm going to give you some body language positions today as you're on the phones. That's going to kind of help you with those and making sure that you get your emotions across the phone as well as you're talking to people. So I love that part. All right, give everybody one more second. Anybody else have anything that they would like to add on that? Going once, going twice. All right, just using the checklist. Yeah, so checklist. I mean, here's the thing. Have you ever gotten busy and you knew a checklist like the back of your hand? And have you ever gotten busy? Let's think about this. Has there ever been a time in the morning, and don't raise your hand, don't say it out loud, right? Has there ever been a time in the morning where you woke up late and you were just so rushed that you forgot to brush your teeth? See, and when you forgot to brush your teeth, you realize that, wait a minute, I've been brushing my teeth for 20, 30, 40 years. And now I ran out of the house without brushing my teeth. And see, if you had a checklist that you were working through every single morning, even as you got up, you would still be able to get up and get running as fast as you could. And you wouldn't have missed some of those details. And so that's kind of the cool part about a checklist. I worked on the scorecard and found several areas to focus on. Man, Rhonda, that is so powerful, because here's the thing. As you're looking at this, as you're looking and going forward and moving forward, you realize that as you're tracking score, I just got off the call just like a few minutes ago with Diana Kokoska, and she mentioned that if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And that's why I love that the scorecard is actually in this manual, because it gives you the ability not only to track it and measure it, it gives you the ability to improve it. And so I love that. I love that you're working through those and making sure that you got that together and moving forward on that. So congratulations, Rhonda. Good stuff. All right. So as we get into chapter 4, tracking, and what we're actually talking about is we're actually talking, property's gone under contract. And now you've actually called and introduced yourself to the clients. And now we're tracking from the time of introduction of the clients through all the pieces that we have got to maintain until we get to the end, where we're getting loan commitment and getting ready to go into the contract. or to the closing. And so, you know, the closing part of it, we're going to cover that in a future chapter called All the Final Details. And so, you know, I think that's pretty cool. And we'll cover all of that one next week. I will actually be in a different location next week as we do this call. I'll be in Charleston, South Carolina, attending a class down there. And so next Friday, we'll be doing it from maybe a hotel room or a hotel lobby or somewhere like that, a hotel business center, so that we can get that going on that. So let's go ahead and jump into the material today. We're talking about chapter 4 in the MREA contract, MREA admin contract to close. And as you're looking at this, it talks about the loan process. And so there's, you know, we're going to talk about 5 different pieces of the loan process. I know there's so many more pieces behind the scenes, yet that, you know, we're going to talk about the five major ones today. And so these are places where you've got to request updates from certain people. Now, you may not have all 5 of these because you may have a cash closing and your buyers aren't doing an appraisal on it. You may even have a situation where the clients aren't doing a survey. The house was built, you know, 2 years ago. The subdivision survey still is good. They're not planning on putting up a fence. And so they may waive their right for a survey. And so as we go through this, I'll just kind of hit the, you know, the 5 topics here. Number 1 is we got to check on their credit. Now, what are we checking on when we're checking on the credit? Number one thing that we need to check on when we're checking on credit is we need to make sure that they have made full loan application. See, because they could actually get a pre-qualification and not a pre-approval and have never even met or never even given anything over to the mortgage broker or loan originator or to the actual mortgage company. And so you can have a pre-qualification based just on checking your credit score and what you've told them you've made and those kind of things. And so number 1 is understanding the difference between a pre-qualification. That's what it is. Based on what you've told me and based on your credit score, I can get you approved. All right. Now, there's a different piece in here. It's called the pre-approval. The pre-approval means that based on all the documents that you have given me, based on your credit score, based on verifying your job income and those kind of things, your tax returns, I can get you approved. And by the way, you've already gone through the preliminary underwriting process. And through that preliminary underwriting process, the underwriters have come back and said you are approved for this amount of money. So there is a difference there between a pre-qualification letter and a pre-approval letter. And so as you're getting these in as admin, as you're getting those 2 documents in, make sure which one you got. Is it a pre-qualification or is it a pre-approval letter? All right. Now, the next thing that you're following up on is appraisal. So probably here locally, we're probably running about 95% of our homes do have an appraisal on it. It may be different for your location. You may be in a situation where there's tons of investment properties where people are coming in paying cash, those kind of things. And so you may not have an appraisal in there. And sometimes even the lender will not require an appraisal, and yet your client may still desire to have an appraisal if that's what they choose. So a couple of things that you're checking on on the appraisal. Number 1, you're checking on the fact that you have an appraisal. Are the clients doing it? Number 2, has it been ordered yet? And number 3, has it come back? Have they been out there? And number 4 in that appraisal process is, did it come back clear? Okay, meaning by clear, 2 things that could happen. 1, the appraiser could come back and say, hey, I can appraise this house at this price, yet there are some statements, conditional statements that on this appraisal that need to be taken care of. It may be if it's a VA loan or just a VA loan in that situation. It may be that it's got lead-based paint that's peeling on the outside, and so the house needs to be scraped and painted before they can give an actual approval on that. There may be no flooring in the house, and say an FHA or a VA closing, there may not be any flooring there, and so your client may have to come in and put flooring in, or not your client, the seller client may have to come in and put flooring in. And so just kind of giving you an idea on some of the things. If the house doesn't appraise, is it a renegotiation, or is even the contract contingent upon the appraisal? Okay, because they may do an appraisal and not come back, and then the clients have said, hey, look, I'm willing to pay $20, $30, $40,000 more than what it's appraised for so I can get the house. Just depends on how tight the market is. I know in some markets that may sound like, wow, that's crazy, yet in other markets it may just be standard practice. And so next thing is survey. Now, surveys are in our area are not something that's done very often, yet we do have people that do them. Let's say they're moving into a subdivision. And as they're moving into a subdivision, they were planning on putting a fence up, let's say a 6-foot privacy fence or any kind of fence up right away. And so they do a survey so that it's already marked out so that they can go ahead and put the fence in and make sure that your fence, when you put it in, doesn't go over onto somebody else's property lines. They may do that. See, where else could you do a survey? Anytime you're buying any kind of land, there's utility markers, those kind of things. Here locally, if there's been a survey done, and this is scary, if there's been a survey done in the last 50 years here in the local area, it's not required, or the attorney is not going to advise to get another survey. 50 years, ladies and gentlemen, is a long time. And so you may have had a neighbor that has added a fence, added a building, those kind of things, and they may be encroaching on your client's property. And so you could actually, by doing the survey, kind of ward off any challenges that may come up after they purchase the property. And that's what we're here for. We're here to save them future challenges. It may not even be something that ever shows up yet. Here it is. We've already protected them for it. All right. Next one is title work. Title work is usually in my state, in state of South Carolina, it's ordered by the attorney. Most states, or a lot of states that have title companies, is actually going to be ordered by the title company. 1, has it been ordered? And 2, when are you expecting it back? And 3, is it back and are we clear? All right. Do we have any encumbrances on the property that may hold us back? All right. Number 5 is the buyer's insurance. Okay. Now, I have to tell one of my stories. I love to tell my stories because I think my stories, or I hope my stories actually cause other people to circumvent their learning curve, make it shorter. And so one of the things, my very first closing was a mobile home ever back in 2003. And my client thought he was going to get just a cheaper type of insurance. And so he worked midnight. So we scheduled the closing for as soon as he got off work. So he was going to come in at 8 o'clock and we were going to do the closing. Well, we finally closed that property out because once the mortgage company and the attorney saw the insurance policy that he had gotten, they realized that they had not gotten enough of a policy to protect the mortgage company. And so they were requiring more, and we couldn't get in touch with the insurance agent. And because we couldn't get in touch with the insurance agent, we couldn't get a new policy written. And because we couldn't get a new policy written, we actually showed up at 8 o'clock a.m. that morning, and we finally walked out of there closed at 5:30 p.m. that same day. My client ended up sleeping in his car before he went back to work that afternoon. So I tell you, it can happen. And so make sure that you're not just following up on all the other pieces. Make sure your client understands the homeowner's insurance and make sure that they're getting that. All right, so now let's cover each piece of those, and we kind of gone through it a little bit. Number 1 is loan application. Have they made application? Have we gotten loan commitment? Has the mortgage broker come back and said, hey, you've gone through underwriting and now you've got loan commitment with some conditional statements? See, there may be anytime a loan company comes to you and says, hey, I've got a conditional loan approval, or I've got loan approval, or I've got loan commitment, there still may be some conditional statements there. Some of those statements would be required to be filled out at the closing table, and those will just be general, they got to sign a HUD statement, those kind of things, and then some of them are situations that are, you've got to fight to get over. And so anytime that a attorney comes back and says, or I shouldn't say an attorney, and a mortgage comes back and says, hey, we've got approval based on these conditional statements, I've actually gone as far as to have to request those additional statements so that I could actually help my clients achieve that and get them through it so we could get those things closed. And, we're all the time talking about going the extra mile, because the extra mile is where our customer service is. And here's the cool part. Going the extra mile doesn't actually mean you went a mile. You may have traveled with them for, 2 miles, and just going a tenth of a mile more means that you went the extra mile. The only difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just a little bit extra. And so what else are you doing? Make sure that your clients go through this process, easy peasy. All right, the last piece of this is the final loan approval. This is when you actually, get those 3 words, clear to close. That's where everybody posts on Facebook. Woohoo, I got to clear to close. The 3 most fantastic words in real estate, clear to close. And so as you're looking through this and working through this, that's that final loan approval. That's when you're ready to go to the closing table. Sometimes you don't get it until that morning. We've had situations here locally where we did not get final loan approval until we were actually sitting at the table. And so those things happen. And so you got to prepare your clients for those type of things and say, hey, here's a situation. This is out of our control. And yet let me know, or I'm here to let you know that I'm here. This has happened before. Here's what we've done. It's going to be okay, or it's not going to be okay, or here's some things that we need to watch out for this today. And so, just kind of look through that and watch on that. All right. Submission, the loan process, submitting to underwriting. When property is actually submitted to underwriting, you need to know how long it's going to be. Because you could have a USDA loan. And so there's 2 underwriting processes in a USDA loan. One is the actual bank has to go through the process and get it fully through underwriting. And then it's got to be turned over to USDA, and they've got to go through their own underwriting process as well. And depending on how backed up they are, depending on what time of the month it is, and depending on how far in the year, that could make some challenges. And so you have to watch that when we're looking about those underwriting when you're submitting to underwriting, because I've seen USDA be backed up as far as 28 days before. And that can create a challenge when you've got 14 days for underwriting at your local bank and then another 28 days for underwriting at the USDA office. And so those things kind of can put some challenges in there. And if you knew those going up front, that this was a USDA loan, and your agent knew that this was a USDA loan, and as you're talking to the processors, as soon as you got a USDA loan coming through, go ahead and reach out to the processor or to the loan originator and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you find out how backed up USDA is right now so that I know and can prepare the client that, hey, we may need to do an extension of this contract. This is where we're at, those kind of things. And so that'll help you in the process and just save you a lot of time and challenges later on. What I found, and sounds weird, and yet when you figure it out, it's pretty powerful. The number one thing that you can do as you're going through this underwriting process and as you're going through this contract to close process is that you have got to anticipate the questions you're going to receive from your clients before you receive them. If you get a question from the client and then you answer it after the fact, after they've asked it, at that point, they start to put a ding into your customer service score. If you say, hey, here's a challenge, here's where we're at, here's what we're doing, and you do it up front before they ask the question, then at that point, it actually puts a good mark on top of your customer service score. And so start anticipating your client's needs and your questions before you actually even receive them. All right, loan documents. Now, I know a lot of times I include myself, I kind of dust my hands off and say, hey, loan documents, that's on the attorney or on the lender. And yet here's the thing, we need to make sure that our clients do have a good faith estimate. We can kind of stave some of those challenges off when they get hit. Make sure that they've got a truth in lending statement, and you've got all those disclosures, because now with TRID, the wonderful TRID, those things go into play. And so you have to watch those items. All right, appraisal. Number one question, and this is when I get a lot of times with VAs, people that are buying using a VA loan for it. Oh, I don't need an inspection. The VA appraiser takes care of that. Ladies and gentlemen, the VA appraiser does not take care of the inspection. Are they inspecting the property for certain items? Yes. Are they doing a full home inspection? No. And so with that being said, make sure that if you have a client that's a VA client, they come in and they say, hey, what do I need to do here? You make sure that you do have that. And what I always suggest is make sure you're having a form. have a form and as you are putting them under contract, your agent may put them under contract and then you send them the form and go through the form with them. Or as the agent is getting them under contract, which I think is best, as the agent's getting them under contract, they actually go through the form to begin with. And what is all on this form? Well, the cool part is that we actually given you a part of this on page number 68 of the manual. There's part of a form, and I think you need to add a few things to it. So number one, it says, will the buyer order the following inspections? Home inspection and termite inspection. Now we've gone as far as to added mold inspection, radon inspection on there. And so just some of those things. Greenville, South Carolina actually has a high concentration of radon. We have one of the highest concentrations of radon in the state of South Carolina, and we've got some pretty big seams of radon through there. And so that may be something that they have to do. And keep in mind, radon is a natural occurring gas, and it can be mediated without any challenges. And so it's just a matter of getting that done and getting that inspection done. What other inspections could you have done? Let's see, you could do well water, you could do septic, and so add those inspections on there, or maybe even just put a block for other, and then make sure your agent's got a checklist that they're going through it asking, are you doing this one? Are you doing this one? Are you doing that one? All right. Next thing it's got on here is the buyer's request for Keller Williams to order, or your team to order those inspections. If you do not have that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, and this was my big aha as I've gone through all of this stuff for the last few years. My big aha is that, wait a minute, I'm ordering these inspections for my clients. If my clients walk away, then who's responsible for the inspection? I ordered it. Is my client responsible for it? Because the home inspector doesn't even know, a lot of times hasn't even met that client, doesn't know anything about that client. And so I'm the one that's ordering it. And so the way this is set up is to get permission to order it so that you're protecting you and your team from liability later on if that home inspector missed something and they came back and said, hey, you ordered the inspection, so it was your responsibility. Whereas if you had them sign off that yes, it was okay, and that they are releasing you of liability and putting the liability on the home inspector, and the home inspector misses something, they're not coming back to you that you didn't do your job. And so this is a lot of CYA stuff on this, and yet it's pretty powerful because it sets some expectations up front. And I think anytime that we can set expectations up front, we've done much better than not setting the expectations up front and having to deal with them in the past and later in the future. All right. Or does the buyer waive the right? Now, this one, I think it's got to be on there. It's got to be on there. We've actually gone to our broker in charge, and I suggest going to your broker in charge when you're looking for wording on these things to make sure that you do this wording. What I see so many times is I see people go on Facebook and they ask for a form and it's got all this wording on it, and they never take it to the broker in charge and get the broker in charge to approve the wording, to approve that wording that's on there. And so if the broker in charge has never approved the wording and something happens, is the broker in charge going to throw you under the bus? Now, I hope not, and yet it still could happen. And so they say, I've never seen that form before in my entire life. I've never signed off on that. So if you've got the form and you take it to them and you have them initial it and you put it in your records that they approve the form, bam, ladies and gentlemen, you are protected, and you took care of yourself, you took care of your team, and you took care of providing yourself with the liability. All right. So make sure that you're covering yourself on those type of things about any form that you have done. Even if you've got .loop teams and just so if you've not checked out .loop teams, I would suggest checking that out. It's where your admins can log into their own personal login. And then everybody that's on their team, they have access to every single one of those documents of everybody on that team. Now, the cool part is that one team member cannot see the other team members unless they have admin access. And so it kind of still gives you that privacy so that if you've got two agents on the same team negotiating against each other, they can't see what's going on in the other document. All right, until it's been shared with them. And so that's a pretty powerful situation there. And .loop teams made it so much easier. We were wasting more money. It cost us more money for my admins to log out and log back in as another agent than to just stay logged in than it was costing for .loop teams. And so by my hourly rate, and you can sit down and figure those two things up, how long is it taking you to log out and log back in? By how many times are you doing that a day? What's the total number of hours that you're doing that per day and then multiplying that times what your expense is per hour, and then take that out to a monthly basis. When you get that out to a monthly basis, here's what .loop teams are a cost, and here's what this is costing me. And so you and your mega can sit down and actually figure that out. It's a really cool piece, and that's why we went ahead and paid for the system. All right, home inspections, home inspections. So one is the house contingent upon home inspection. Are the buyers doing a home inspection? Because I know in sometimes a multiple offer situation, they may make it not contingent on inspection. Still got the right to do it, yet I'm not making it contingent on those inspections. And so as you're going through this, make sure that you are going through your checklist. Right here, you've got on your checklist of home inspection items, you've got a total of 6 things that you've got on here. Make sure that the buyer knows the closing department, that they know the time of the inspection and the date of the inspection, who the inspector is, and if the inspector would like to have them at a certain time. See, there's nothing worse than a home inspection. In my area, we've got tons of engineers in our area with the industry that we have. And because we have tons of engineers, a lot of times the engineers go, hey, I got to be there at 11 o'clock. The home inspection is at 11 o'clock. I'm going to be there and I'm going to look over that guy's shoulder or that lady's shoulder the entire time to make sure they're doing their job. I'm going to tell you, if that happens, it's almost guaranteed that your home inspector will miss something because they get nervous. They're like, oh, this is taking me longer. I've got to get to another one. And so it's gonna more than likely cause a situation. What we like to do is we like to have our home inspector tell us a time that they would like to have our clients there. And then once they do that, once they've met and given us a time, let's say the home inspection is 11, it's a 2-hour home inspection. And so that would take them all the way till 1. Our clients, they would like to have our clients there for the last 30 minutes of the home inspection. They'll actually go through the home inspection with them of what things are major, what things are minor, and what things are just general repair items. And then from there, our clients already have the knowledge as we're sitting down and putting together a repair request. They kind of already know what to ask for and not what to ask for based on the contract. One of our contractors actually goes through and puts green, yellow, and red. And red things are the things that are on the contract that they would be required. In our contract, our repair contract is paragraph 16. And so it has all of the paragraph 16 items on there that could be required to go forward with this contract in good faith. Or the things that are in yellow, things that could potentially be on the bubble, like if your gas logs are not working, I always consider them to be an appliance. Some people do not consider it to be an appliance. And so, that would be a yellow item if those were not working. And then you've got your green items as those things are things that do not need to be asked for. You got a light bulb that needs to be replaced, those kind of things, minor things. You got a door that's not, matching up correctly, more your cosmetic type items. All right, number 2, follow up on the buyers within 24 to 48 hours. All right, now here's the thing. If you wait 24 hours and they haven't gotten that home inspection and they've met with the home inspector and the home inspector did not tell them when to expect it, be prepared, they're going to be giving you a call within the 24 hours. So this is one of the great places where you can start to anticipate questions. So as soon as that home inspection is supposed to be over, maybe wait 30 minutes, reach out to them. You can even slide dial them. So you go straight into their voicemail and say, hey, here's what to expect. All right. So just setting those expectations and then meeting them. Number 3, call the seller's agent and inform the inspection date, time, and the inspector will have how they're going to have access to the property. Now, there's a lot of debate. I see a lot of debate on this. And if you show up at a home inspection, and you have to run this by your broker in charge, because I know that some brokers have different requirements on this. Yet if you show up at your home inspection, this is my take on it and my take only, so make sure you run this by your broker in charge, is that if I show up at a home inspection and the home inspector missed something and it should have been something that I could have seen, who else, according to law in the state of South Carolina, who else is responsible for that? I am. If it's visual and I could have seen it and it's something that I could have seen with my general knowledge of real estate and the home inspector missed it and I didn't bring it up, ladies and gentlemen, then I'm on the hook for it. Now, if I am not there at that home inspection, then guess what? I'm not on the hook for it. And so nobody on my team ever shows up at the home inspection. We always allow the inspector to do that. They all of our inspectors have a lockbox key, which means they are licensed. They just don't practice selling real estate, that they can get a key, get into the house so that we don't have to worry about it. They're all licensed and bonded. And so we just make sure that that's all taken care of and we don't have to worry about it. All right. Call the seller's agent. Once an inspection report comes in, call the buyer to schedule time to review the report. Now, some of you in some states, you are going to be required to be licensed to review to do that. Some states may not. In my situation, what I've always said is that I do not have my admin negotiating repair requests. That's on the agent. I know that there are some people that say, hey, I don't negotiate repair requests. All we do is we send the client and ask them what would they like to have done. The client signs off on what they would like to have done. We write it up and send it over to the other agent. In that situation, the admin could do that. Yet I think it kind of, in my opinion, strictly my opinion, it just kind of cuts down on the customer service piece of that. All right, because we are supposed to be negotiating repairs. Hey, I know that it says it needs an air filter and those kind of things, and don't let that scare you. It's a $5 item. You just replace it when you get there. If we ask for it, if we don't ask for it, I know it's an HVAC item and that it's required to be done. Yet if we don't ask for it, maybe we can buy some goodwill to get this item done that we really desire to have done. And so I think there's some skill and some art in that. And I think that goes back to the agent to negotiate that and take that off of the admin's plate. If the admin is licensed, I'm more than happy to have the agent do, or have the admin do that. Just make sure it's hard to negotiate for 40 contracts when you can have one agent that's negotiating 3. And so it makes it a little bit easier. You're spreading that challenge over several agents versus keeping it on one admin. All right. Let's see, going down to the next piece here is that review the buyer's report, recap with them, make sure that you've got, repair limits. And I always tell my buyer's agents, if they negotiate hard on the price, it's going to be very difficult to negotiate hard on the repair request. So if you negotiate okay on the price, then it may be easier to negotiate on the repair request. How are we setting it up for the future? All right, and number 5 is the contract contingent upon satisfactory results. And so, some places have the unilateral right to terminate, some places do not. It's up to your contract. And so that one's going to be on your contract, whether you have that right or you do not. Now, here's another form. Once everybody is signed off on that repair request, we actually have a form that's from our state and from our local board that all the repair requests go on. Once everybody signed off on that, agreeing who's doing what, then we are good. If you do not have that, then in the form section of this class, there is one in there. Now, also, if you need an extension, the market's shifted, you got home inspectors are down on their date and you need an extension on that, there's an actual form in the book that will actually give you the ability to extend that as well. Inspections, repair requests, you got it right here. It's on page number 73. When we're talking about repair requests and we're negotiating that, make sure that you know your deadline. Does your deadline have a date and does it have a time? Okay. If it doesn't have a time, then in my situation, I always consider it to not be due until 11:59 seconds, right? Because as soon as I flip over to 12 a.m., it starts the new day. And I actually had a situation where our contract did not have a time in it. I submitted the repair request at 11:51 at the end of the deadline. We got called in the court, and because I had an email that backed up that I sent it at 11:51, even though the buyer client or the seller client didn't respond because they thought we were out of our deadline, I actually won because I had the email that said I had sent it at 11:51 and it did not expire until 11:59 and 59 seconds. And so we actually covered that. So make sure you got your dates and times in there by when you would like to do that. Now, here when we're talking about negotiating repairs, and this may be something that if your agents are negotiating your repair request, this is something that you probably need to have your agents actually learn this. So number 1, we're talking about customer service, because contract to close, the admin is getting evaluated on customer service. And in most cases, on most teams, those kind of things, we're tracking those items. Yet here's a word. The word is empathy. Now, there's this new word that's out there that I think is getting misconstrued as empathy. Let's take the difference. The new word is called I'm an empath. All right? Now, it's a really cool word, and yet I think it gets misconstrued. They're confusing the two. There's a difference between empathy and an empath. An empath means that not only can I see the other person's perspective, yet I also take on that person's feelings, and then I start to act as that person. That's an empath. All right? Empathy means that I can see the other person's point of view. I can understand how they feel that they would feel that way. And I do not necessarily take on those feelings. So there is a difference there. Now, let me give you a body language perspective. So when you take your right hand, or your whichever hand that you're dominant with, and you place it right here on your chest, and you start to talk to your clients with your hand on your chest and maybe even tapping your chest, as you're going through this, then at that point, you're taking on the feelings. You're understanding the other part of that, where their feelings are at. You're not necessarily taking them on as your feelings. Now, a lot of people say they're empaths and they take on those feelings and then they start to react just like the clients are. That is not what we as agents or mega agent admins are supposed to do. Because at that point, when we take on those feelings and we start to act on those feelings, then most likely we are going to cause that contract to come crashing down and fail. And so when we take on when we understand the feelings, yet we know we've got an end goal, and is it still in the best interest of the client? That's always rule number one, is it the best interest of the client? Because we have a fiduciary responsibility. Is it in the best interest of the client for us to continue with this contract? If it is, then it's your job not to take on those feelings that cause that contract to come crashing down. You're to understand your client's point of view and keep moving them forward because it is in their best interest, not necessarily in your best interest. Fiduciary responsibility means that it may not be in my best interest, yet it is in their best interest. And so for that, I'm moving forward. And so empathy. Touch your chest when you need to feel empathy for someone else, and understand their perspective, yet not take it on. Just bring your hand to your chest. It works while you're on the phone as well. All right. And so just the slight body language. Ladies, if there's any ladies on here that are from the South, you have got this down. You say, bless your heart. And you put your hand on your chest. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you are not from the South, that is not a term of endearment when they do that. And yet, because they put their hand on their chest, I know a lot of people that's like, oh, they really cared about me. No, that's like a backhanded slap. And so, you can do it. You can do it without taking on their feelings. You've done it all the time if you've ever said, bless your heart. All right. So next one, selective agreement. What can you agree on and what can you not agree on, and focus on what you can agree on first. All right. And then go into problem solving skills. I will tell you, I had a situation, to be honest, I'm always transparent. I had a situation, we got to a closing and the other agent looked at me and they said, hey, J. Michael, where's the termite letter? You ordered it. You're the buyer's agent. I'm the listing agent. And they said, well, we use the Spartanburg contract, and the Spartanburg contract actually allows us to choose. And we checked that you were going to order the termite inspection. And so, at that point, like problem solving skills, what can I do? Who is my best termite inspector and who will do a favor for me? Immediately pick up the phone. Hey, Hunter Pest Control. Hey, here's the situation. I'm sitting at a closing table and I need a termite letter in the next 15 minutes. Is there any way that you can help me out? Who do you have close to this? Then they immediately got in the car, drove over there, did a termite inspection for me, and they called me back while we were still sitting at the closing table filling out all the paperwork that was contingent upon that termite inspection. I sent it in, said we were good. At that point, they closed on the verbal. We sent it over before the end of the closing. We got the actual termite letter in, got it done, and closed on time. And yet, sometimes that's just a problem-solving skill that you've got to go, because at that point, I was not using a checklist, and I had not written down who was actually responsible for the checklist. All right? And so that was on me, full responsibility. I took ownership of it and made it through, and we figured it out. All right, negotiating repairs, we're negotiating the repair agreement, make sure that everybody has agreed on that. Now there's, in this chapter or in this book, there's 3 different forms to handle all of that. Our local MLS board and our state MLS, they actually have one for us all so that we can all use that and everybody, and it takes those 3 forms and combines it into one. Your state may be differently, and so you just have to know what yours are. Scheduling contractors, so make sure you're scheduling your contractors, and make sure, I had a situation where, I'm traveling and I had a closing. We had to get a home inspector in, so on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock, I went and put a lockbox on a door, put a key in that, and that was a punch button, so a contractor's box, so that the contractor could get in because he didn't have a key. So sometimes you just gotta have to do that so that you can get things done and make sure that you're doing that. Make sure that you're using reputable contractors, because your contractors will show up in your customer service rating if you have a bad contractor. We've even gone as far as to stop using certain contractors because they made us look bad because they missed something or they didn't do something. Now you got, sometimes you got a contract or credit in lieu of repairs. They can do that, a credit in lieu of repairs. Be careful with those right now. The mortgage companies do not like those sometimes. And so just be careful on that. It may just be a re-inspection depending on how far in the process you actually are. And so that may help you on that situation. All right, and there's also a form in there for you on that one. Reduction of the sales price. Sometimes you may reduce the sales price, and so make sure that you're filling out your addendum on that, or a closing cost credit that you're filling out an addendum on that. Now, when you're filling out those type of addendums, you're reducing the price, addendum in lieu of repairs, or you are reducing the closing cost in lieu of the repair, or increasing the amount that the seller will pay for the buyer's closing cost, then in lieu of repairs. That's an addendum that would need to be added to the contract, and that addendum would need to go to the attorney and to the mortgage company so that everybody is privy to that. Now, denying a house because of a home inspection, anytime that in our state, anytime that we deny a house because of a home inspection, or we negotiate or negate a contract because of a home inspection, our actual contract states that we will share that home inspection and why we did that for free to the sellers. Other states may not be like that. Other MLSs may not even be like that. And that's what's standard in our area. If you're going to negate because of a home inspection, we think it's kind of proper etiquette to go ahead and share that with the sellers so that they know why you backed out. All right. Now, escrow releases. I'm sure that your state board probably already has a document on your contract release, and so it actually explains who's actually getting the escrow and those kind of things. We've gone as far in our local Keller Williams office here is that the attorney handles all of the escrow checks instead of our local office, because the attorney has different requirements around how they can release earnest money versus us. We are required to not release that earnest money until everybody has signed and agreed upon where that money is going. We cannot make the determination of where it goes. As an attorney, though, an attorney has the ability to do that. And so it's kind of freed up us some situations on that. That's a broker in charge type question. And so, if that's something you'd like to have done, then that would be going to your broker in charge and see if that's a possibility. All right, post-termite inspection. We're on page number 85 right now in the manual, page number 85. And this is the last little piece of this, is that on this post-termite inspection, make sure that your report is faxed. I love that. Make sure it's faxed. Do any of y'all even have a fax machine left in your offices anymore? And so here's the thing. Hey, make sure that it gets to the lender if the lender is requiring it. If the lender is not requiring it, do not send it to the lender. Send it to the attorney and let the attorney have that, or to the title company if the title company needs it as well. Make sure that they include all the invoices. Now, here's a cool checklist that I think everybody needs. It's not in this book, and I think it's a good checklist. Do you have a checklist of every single time you order an inspection and you get an invoice in, or an invoice that needs to go onto the closing disclosure, now previously called the HUD statement? Then what on that closing disclosure, do you have a checklist of every invoice that needs to be included on that, so that when the HUD statement comes in or the closing statement comes in, you can actually work through that. And as you work through that, you can make sure that every single invoice that is supposed to be on the HUD is. Ladies and gentlemen, that one thing has cost me so much money after the fact. Well, it's supposed to have been on the HUD and it's not on the HUD, so that must mean that J. Michael, you're responsible for it. And guess what? J. Michael Manley gets. J. Michael Manley gets to actually write a check for that item and whatever it cost. Has been as much as $700 and some dollars, and has been as little as $25, and yet I've handled it, because here's the thing. In bold, we talk about eliminating greed, envy, and unethical behavior. And how much is a value of a client with a referral worth to you? And so we actually talk about that it is priceless. So a client that has a great service item and sending you referrals back, that actually is priceless for you. And so it's much cheaper for me just to write the check and then get the referral later on, letting the client know that I did do that. check with your megas, those kind of things, get their ideas on that. There's different ideas across the board. Yeah, like I said, in bold, I always tell the story where I had one year where I had to buy three, count them, 3 refrigerators. My wife said if I didn't improve the system or stop buying refrigerators, that it was going to, I was going to have something else to pay. And so we figured out a system so that I did not have to buy refrigerators again. And it was actually just a flaw on our checklist. And because it was a flaw on our checklist, it ended up costing me some money, a lot. And so so just watch on that. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to come in here and let's see here, participants. I'm going to unmute everybody so everybody will have the opportunity to speak or to type into their chat bar any questions. We've got about 14 more minutes here if we have any questions. If we don't, we won't go through that full amount. Everybody is unmuted now. And so if you have any questions, if you need anything, any questions about this particular situation, let us know. How can we help you?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you could bring him up.
Okay. So
I haven't been able. I would talk to him about it.
All right.
Maybe we could discuss
Any
it.
questions?
Yeah.
Got a few people in here talking. No questions. Going once. Going twice. Do you send ATAC to the lender? So now you're going to have to help me on that acronym because that's one that I'm not 100% familiar with. So definitely if you can just let me know on that what you mean. The addendum to address two concerns. I don't like if it's an inspection issue or anything like that. I'm doing my best to keep that out of the attorney and out of the lender's hands, and just keeping it between the two parties that are privy to the contract during negotiation. And then, if we have something that changes the contract, then of course that would actually get sent over to them. The less red flags that I can have going to the underwriter, in my opinion, I think is better. Have you ever had your TC take a negotiations course? Is there a book that you could recommend for that? So there was a gentleman going around doing negotiating courses in a class that I took I should start to say a few years ago. It's been much longer than a few years ago. Probably closer to 10 years ago that I took. And it was a great course. My TCs have not gone through that. There's actually a great book out there that somebody has gifted me that is called Never Split the Difference in Negotiations. And so that may be a good book to actually read. There's tons of when you look at Dale Carnegie courses and those kind of things, there are some courses that they require on negotiations. So that may be a good opportunity to take there. Yet make sure that your TCs are licensed if they're negotiating those repairs and those kind of things. Okay? Anyone else? Those are good questions. Good questions. All right, so we'll go going once, going twice. So, ladies and gentlemen, go out there and have an amazing week. We got one more week on contract to close, then we'll skip a couple of weeks.